confidential info. So I'm fine with that.
Absolutely. So this part of your confirmation has come into the recording.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right. So I think it's six, just a minute over the people who are joining in. But let's just start. Thank you, Sai, for taking time out. I know Sai shifted from Bangalore to Pune, and it's very nice of him. Now we can claim him a part of Pune chapter. So just to make this very, very clear to everyone.
We have proprietary rights on him, is it?
Exactly.
Pune
Uh,
chapter.
Yeah.
right. So again, Friday evening, as I already mentioned, he has kept things light, but I'm sure the topic is quite interesting and useful to everyone, because when we were speaking, the whole idea was, while data and analytics is extremely relevant, we have had different connected sessions around it. But I think one of the key takeaway is for people who have been very, very deep into this world, how, I mean, what are some of the finer nuance that we can draw from Sai, his experience, so that it helps us on two counts. One, as we are doing the day-to-day consulting business. Second, in terms of the delivery of consulting that we are doing. So I think it's the primary two things, and maybe related other things that Sai would cover during the discussion. So I just open it up to give you a context. Sai, of course, currently is the VP for data and analytics at Bajaj Auto. So one of the biggest in the field that they are working. And we all know that the data points of the bikes sold and the prospect across the globe, they are sort of one of the key market leaders around the area. So, I mean, that's something that we hope Sai will share a little bit more about. That said, Sai, all yours. You, as I said, you can continue with the session for about 40 odd minutes, and then we open it up for Q&A.
Sure. Thanks, Chandan, and thanks, Jay, for the warm welcome. So I'm quite privileged to be here with you today, and I'd like to talking on a topic of my passion, which is data and analytics. So I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know when the screen is visible.
Yes.
Super. So, so as we begin this presentation, and since we are recording, let me put in a mandatory disclaimer, right? So whatever I'm going to say today is my personal opinion and not necessarily reflective of any of my associates or clients or employers, right? So that's the first thing I would like to say, since we are talking about data and analytics. Now, let me start with a quick introduction. Uh, and then we can get on to the topic. So I'm currently, as Chandan mentioned, responsible for data and analytics at Bajaj Auto. Previously, I worked with GlaxoSmithKline in a techno-functional leadership role with Honeywell and with multiple other organizations. My focus has been on developing data and analytics as assets for decision making within businesses. So, whether it's a business or whether it's a function such as IT or marketing, sales, supply chain, HR, data and analytics, in my observation, has played a very crucial role and sometimes a pivotal role in how these functions have evolved, become more contemporary, become more cost effective, and help the organization be more competitive. So I've been fortunate to work with multiple industries. So I worked in manufacturing in multiple companies, whether it's currently the manufacturing of motorcycles or previously with biopharma, or in the case of Honeywell, you know, it's a diversified conglomerate, usually B2B manufacturing and sales with logistics, banking, and different organizations. So, what these experiences have shown me is that whichever organization we are in, data is an asset and it plays in helping leaders make decisions and actually helping everyone in the organization take the right decisions and be more uh, competitive and be more effective in the company. It is also uh, a great advantage for from a management consulting perspective uh, in my roles, where a management consultant who analytics techniques is able to you apply generalist methods and add value across different industry sectors, as I'm sure uh, you know uh, participants in this call have done and have experienced as well. So I'll quickly move over to um, a lighter moment. So some of us might have seen this cartoon, right? So it's a Dilbert cartoon, and here the boss asks, he's reading a status report that Wally has given, and this is the character called Wally, and usually is portrayed as a very lazy character in Dilbert. And the boss says that your status report seems to have been written by a commercial grade AI. So if the boss has somehow figured out that this report is too good to have come from Wally, and Wally coolly thanks him for the compliment. And then the boss says, add some mistakes so that it looks like a human did it. And now the joke is, does the imaginary human use a spell check or does he not, right? So it means that there is a uncertainty in where this data and where this report originated from. So how,
Good one.
yeah, so how did we get here? I mean, if we go down history, and for those of us who have been in technical roles with data and analytics might relate more closely to this, and those of us who need to ask questions may do so while we continue. So I can't see the participants on the call raising hands, so please just stop me wherever you feel we need to ask questions. So uh, a lot of us will remember when this whole data science and analytics um, connect started. We kind of progressed from software development into the world of analytics, and typically in software development in companies like Infosys, Wipro, TCS, and so on. So we used to have this software development lifecycle, and there would be a business analyst, there would be project managers, there would be application developers, testers, and so on. So when the data analytics phenomenon started you know really coming to light, and started becoming a lot more pervasive, uh, some of the software development methodologies were taken and employed in the development of analytics. So, for example, requirements development. What do you need as an outcome of the analytic application? Feature engineering was something new. It was a novelty compared to the application of software. Um, in the sense that feature engineering in here meant more about what kind of we need, or that we need to create from existing data to be able to develop predictive models. So these data columns, or these particular variables, were called features. Whereas the word feature from the context of software development used to be with reference to features of an application that we are trying to build, whether it's a web application or some kind of a client server application. And then we started getting more and more specific about how we develop projects. So look at model selection. So once you've developed features, now we need to know what kind of predictive model that we need to build, or what kind of analytic model that we need to build. And there were various classes of models. So there are models meant for classification. There are regression based models that are meant for prediction. And then there are optimization models and so on. So this model selection was a very important step after feature engineering to ensure that we got relevant outcomes and that we got outcomes that are implementable and scalable. And then came training, tuning, and testing. So this is all about how do we develop the right analytic models, and how do we tune, how do we test these models to ensure that they are robust, and then they are they stand the test of validity, and they're generalizable, which is that if we take the model outside the data used for training and testing it, it stands the test of time with the data from the real world. And most important, how do we interpret the result? In some cases, and with some models, the results are more interpretable. Like for example, with models like linear regression and let's say logistic regression and so on, the results were more interpretable, and it much easier for us to explain to the business compared to models that are, let's say, developed using neural networks. So from here, a couple of innovations happened. So there was this tool called H2O.ai. I'm not sure, how many of us remember when it arrived a few years back, but this was quite the, uh, you know, uh, quite the innovation, and it caused a lot of buzz in the data science community because for the first time, an application or a product made this offering that you don't have to learn how to code. You have to select how much of compute that you want the uh, com you know uh, computer to use, or how much of CPU you want the computer to use, how much of memory you want that to use, and how much of time do you want the computer to spend on your problem. And the computer does, or the software does everything for you. So it basically takes your data, takes in the expected output that you want, and then it goes through a whole list of models. So it would do the model selection, training, tuning, testing, and it gives you in return the best output and the best model. And it also shows you a comparison between all the different models it tried and explains why it chose the model it chose. So this was a phenomenal innovation at the time. Around the same time, uh, for from a data science perspective, the auto ML packages started coming in, and auto ML was again a big innovation because in auto ML and before H2O.ai, hyperparameter tuning, which is how do you configure the model with the right technical parameters, was a skill. And sometimes it took brute force methods, sometimes it was a bit of an art, but AutoML helped simplify, or at least for more sophisticated data scientists, gave a starting point where they could take the result of AutoML, take the model it recommended, and then further handcraft it to achieve expected output, or greater levels of nuance. So in effect, the model selection, the model training, model tuning got automated, and the coding effort on the part of the data scientists got minimized. So far, I hope everyone is with me. Please let me know if I'm making sense or not. So this is important feedback for me to calibrate how I'm going through the content.
I think quite relevant. So for to all, in fact, what I would request is if you can pose your questions or suggestions that you have on the chat box, because we'll periodically take a look at it also. But Sai, I think overall it's quite relevant. Please continue.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Chandan. So after this innovation of H2O.ai and AutoML, a lot more work started happening in this area, and the innovation started coming thick and fast. Now, H2O.ai and AutoML are barely 4 to 5 years old, So if you consider the rate of innovation in software, right, and how we got the different programming languages and the improvements on programming languages, like let's say you start with C, you go to C++, or you take Java and the various innovations that have happened. Within 4 to 5 years time, we started getting into this large language model discussion. And what is large language model really? So there are a group of folks who said that we are going to utilize all the public data available, and we are going to create a model that is going to respond, that is going to take inputs in natural language, and it is going to try to answer a question. So there's really no need for coding, and there is also no need to go through the effort of taking a data set, trying to do some feature engineering, and then to basically handcraft uh, a predictive model from a data science perspective. So that went off. And how did these large language models really evolve? So there were a few programs that were more foundational for this. So if you remember Google's program, where they started cataloging all the books and tried to build a corpus of all the books available in the world. So that was a very ambitious project, and uh, Google started off with a lot of the innovation here. But with the large language models, uh, this need for coding went away, and a new skill called prompt engineering was introduced. What is prompt engineering? So imagine you are chatting with someone, right? So I think the first time we were exposed to the concept of chat, um, at least I remember Yahoo Messenger was the first software, or among the first software which really popularized chat. Basically, you had to type in the text, and your friend or relative or whoever, a significant other would respond, and then you continued the chat. At some point, the chat interface became so popular that people thought about including a automated response at the other end. Now, with the large language model being exposed through a conversational interface like a chat, uh, what you ask the chat or what you ask the chatbot became a skill, and that is called prompt engineering. So often people say that if you have to deal with a subject matter expert in a project, typically they say that, hey, you know what, you better ask the right questions or specific questions if you want to get the best out of this expert's time, because they're usually very busy, and B, they can tend to give you answers which are either too broad, or either referring a different context if you don't set the right context and guide them. Therefore, if the expert happens to be a machine or a machine learning model, which is currently getting executed, so it is up to the human to ask the right questions to that model and to get the best out of it. And therefore, prompt engineering is a skill that is needed. And what really is this skill? This is more of a linguistic skill. It's not a specific coding skill in itself. So people who have a mastery on language, or who have studied languages are probably well positioned to do this. Of course, if they have data science skills, that helps them even more. And large language models further evolved to what we see today, right? So we've heard of GPT, generative process transformers, and this came from uh, OpenAI, and Microsoft is a big investor in OpenAI, as we know, and is taking on GPT, or what we know as ChatGPT, into their offerings. Now the integration is going on with Bing, and Chat GPT versions are becoming more and more powerful with each version. So the current version, which is in development yet to be released, is GPT-4, which is able to synthesize content, synthesize images. It's quite powerful. Those of us who get an opportunity to visit Microsoft Technology Center should have a look at it. It's fascinating. So Bard is the competitive offering from Google. Lambda is the open source large language model framework from Facebook, and Bard is utilizing Lambda. So there are various uh, offerings that are coming up in this space. And what's happening here is that applications are being built with uh, the interface too, or the help of GPT and Bard. From a GPT perspective, Microsoft has started packaging applications with what it calls autopilot and copilot solutions for addressing the various enterprise problem statements. So what is autopilot? Autopilot means there is full automation. So you don't need to get involved and oversee it every time. So this is for perfectly repeatable tasks or tasks with some level of business rules that the is there a question? Okay.
No, I think I've just put everyone on mute again. So that's fine. Sai, please continue.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Chandan. So autopilot is all about executing a process automatically. One can put in the relevant business rules and events that need to be monitored and what kind of actions have to be taken, whether it is for business process orchestration or alerts or any actions that need to be taken in terms of triggering applications and triggering various functionality. So that is autopilot. Co-pilot is a very interesting concept that has now come up. So co-pilot means that imagine an aeroplane pilot and a co-pilot, right? So the co-pilot helps out the pilot and steps in when the pilot isn't there. The co-pilot, from a data science perspective, means uh, that you have automation uh, of these large language model processing capabilities helping out. So, for example, imagine you are reviewing a sales dashboard in your business, or as a consultant, you've created a sales dashboard, or you're trying to show some insights to the sales leaders or to the general manager of the business. Now, let's assume there are various KPIs on that dashboard which talk about, hey, this is my sales funnel. This is the throughput of my leads through that funnel. This is how my revenue is, and these are the, let's say, various slices and dices of that KPI, given certain geographies, um, uh, given various things, right? So it could be by markets, it could be by product, it could be by channel, and so on. And sometimes it's not so easy to figure out what's causing either good performance or bad performance by just looking at these charts, unless you have a lot of experience with it, or even if one has a lot of experience, there is a chance that those KPIs can be misleading. So there is always a scope for modeling and automation to have this interaction with the sales leader while they are conducting a review, where the sales leader can simply say, can you explain why my product XYZ has been trending down a couple of quarters in sales? And then this large language model looks at the sales data. It looks at the data available in the public domain and synthesizes an answer. Now, this answer may be uh, reasonably accurate, or it may be slightly inaccurate. this one way or another is quite a powerful response because it starts the conversation. So the concept of Copilot has come into Power BI with Microsoft, and Power BI, as you know, is quite a good visualization software and is also nowadays very widely used. Uh, Copilot is also coming up in areas like GitHub, for example. So data scientists use GitHub quite a bit to uh, check in their code and collaborate with other team members on a project. So this technology has evolved to an extent where it says that I'll do the code review for you. So the data scientist has to check in the code. So another human need not do a code review. So the model does the code review and says to what extent the code is optimized. Are there significant errors? Does this code run a risk of getting into an infinite loop or a performance issue? And what needs to be done to improve on it? So it has gone to that extent, and there are many companies which are actively considering the use of Copilot solution for code reviews. So some of us in software development may remember the days where code reviewing was a taxing process, and the debugging code was not so easy. This is where we stand today. So if you really see some of the chat around Chat GPT, right, and this is a excerpt from Forbes. Uh, so what they're saying is Dilbert gets shown the door. Uh, Chat GPT has started changing work, and there are now non-linear career paths. So it's not about Dilbert and the boss, right? So which was the paradigm. And a very interesting quote that it may be too early to know if the bots are coming for your job, but it's very clear that they are going to impact how you work. So let's talk about that impact a little bit today. But while
Sai, if you allow, I just wanted to probably bring this question up. So I'm sure everyone also in the participants would have heard a lot about ChatGPT today, maybe through them, their children's, maybe to different discussions forum they all been to, because ChatGPT is somehow catching up now. I'm sure not many would have a very clear understanding of what it is today. Maybe some bit of perspective is there, but what is the possibility that we are looking at? That's number one. Number two, I think very interesting observation, of course, which this also points out that, I mean, the general apprehension is with AI and with bots, the jobs will go, which of course I'm never a believer of, because I think history has told us that it never happens that way. Of course, the way in which a particular work will be done will undergo a change. So it can't put people out of job just like that. Of course, the reskilling or the upskilling, of course, has to go in parallel. So maybe if you can just take few minutes to speak about Chat GPT in particular as well, and the evolution you see there, that will be great.
Sure. So I have some of that in my slides, but
Sure.
I'll give you a quick introduction. And as for the second part of the question on impact on jobs and what is the possibilities or the likelihood, that will be covered as well. See this chat. So this uh, generative process transform for large language models, and it's basically the innovation here is uh, the ability to process a lot more data, which is which in earlier times, if no, for those data scientists on our call, right? So we used to have something called natural language processing that was quite the art and fancy for data scientists or two back. And we there used to be college projects where we would say, can you predict the next word based on the last two words or three words that are written based on a corpus of text that is available. And we used to have various techniques, some of those were called n-gram techniques, right? So if for example, if you are using a 2-gram method, so you use two words to predict the third word, and so on. So large language models have gone way beyond this, and it is the kind of features that are learned from text have evolved to such an extent that it is able to pick up on emotions. It is able to easily identify who are the major characters, the major actors, the major stakeholders in a given situation, and is able to convey meaning to near human levels. So those of us who and it's now quite easy to register on OpenAI. Those with connections to Microsoft can also ask for previews, but OpenAI is it takes some the registration takes a little bit of time sometimes, depending on how many people have queued up. But once you're in, you can actually experiment with Chat GPT, and sometimes uh, it answers pretty interesting questions, which can be posed from an ethics perspective as well. And the level of sophistication in the answers I find very surprising. So I'll allude to a little bit more on that and the possibilities as well. So let me talk a little bit about management consulting and Chat GPT. I think that was one of the questions that you asked, right? So what is it, from a jobs or a assignments perspective? So this is an excerpt from India Today, and quite recent, just a few months back. So, Chandan, what you said is that, it's going to make a lot of, it may not necessarily take away jobs, but we've seen such disruptive cycles of innovation coming in the past, and usually there are transformative shifts in what people do, right? So this article also referred to that. So basically it says that, look, I mean, a lot of what people used to do is going to change. So imagine, when we had the digital transformation happening at banks. So a lot of these tellers who are sitting in the counters, right? So their job simply, changed. Many of these jobs transformed into people who are able to operate the banking system, and then do more higher value jobs and more customer centric focus, right? So that is how I've seen at least digital transformation from a banking perspective. And what this article says is that content writing, low level coding, and it all management consulting. I don't know how India Today understood management consulting, but they've clubbed this here. And it's quite interesting, saying that it can create ready-made modules for teaching and for customer support. And customer support is something that I've seen, chatbots respond with empathy. Would you believe it, right? To somebody who's irate, and then try to figure out or try to give some good responses with the next steps on what to do. So while Chat GPT is and LLMs are hyped up, it is
So the
also
article clearly says that the management consulting is at a risk.
yeah, it does, right? So it does. And today let's look at both sides of the picture, right? So we'll look at the hype, we'll also look at the some of the challenges and the derailers, and then let's talk about what management consultants can do given all this. So there are some significant challenges, right? So it's not all rosy, and Chat GPT is not a cure for all ills. So I'm sure a lot of us would have heard about this term called hallucinations when it comes to large language models or GPT. What does this mean? So, see, Chat GPT is it, at least what is available in the public domain, is not trained on data that is close to real time, or not trained on data that is close to even the current month, right? So if you talk to Chat GPT, you will realize that the data was trained up to a couple of years back, right? So it has a tendency to make up stuff. To put it in very simple terms. So it can answer quite confidently if you ask it for a weather forecast of a fictional city, right? So you keep giving it some info and then you ask some question. It can give you an imaginative answer, and this is what we call hallucination. Sometimes it's dangerous when these hallucinatory effects take over in a real business scenario, and it can be quite jarring. The other issue is bias, and this is very hard to detect. See, with human beings, we talk about cognitive bias, and there are so many cognitive biases you would know of. So, groupthink is a bias, for example, right? So, people in a group they're tending in a certain way, and therefore that's a bias, right? So, imagine people who are developing software might have biases, and then the influence on the design of AI creates a bias, right? So I think sometime back there was this article where AI was used to profile and select candidates for job interviews, and there was some very clear uh, biases that impacted inclusiveness and diversity in that organization. So for example, that particular software didn't select people of a certain ethnicity and certain gender, and it was thought to be an error in the software. After some root cause analysis, people figured out that that was the company history, and therefore it helped perpetuate a culture that the company was trying to change and improve upon, right? So there are these cognitive biases that can really impact AI, and it's very important that people take a look into what they are doing with the development of AI. And nowadays we have what is called responsible AI concepts, right? And there is some play for management consulting that we will talk about little later. So incomplete data is a bias, right? Now we can say, hey, you know what, you just said large language models, how can there be incomplete data? But one has to understand that all these little snippets of data that are available in public domain, uh, and which are used to train these models, they are just parts of someone's life here and there. And what AI is trying to do is stitch all of it together, and it imagines that tapestry as the reality, whereas it is just a fragment of life which is left as an imprint in data at that point of time. Therefore, it's incomplete. So yeah, IP and data protection a very big challenge, right? So you nowadays we are talking about data residency. There is the data protection and data privacy regulations that are emerging in India. So if you see the Data Privacy Association of India, and there is Mr. Vinayak Godse, who is the CEO of this institution, and helping the government develop data protection regulations and rules for companies. So this is a rapidly evolving space. Now the question is, what questions should you ask these LLMs? Because the LLMs learn based on your question, and the personal information that you give while setting the context can also impact data privacy or data protection from the regulatory perspective. And then there is cost, right? So all this doesn't come cheap. It's estimated that chat GPT costs over 5 crore a day, and some people think this is conservative. uh, it's actually a loss-making venture at this time, and only big pockets are able to fund this, such as the Microsofts of the world, right? So they have deep pockets that can fund it. The computing capability of these models comes from what are called GPUs, or graphical process units, right? So we have CPU, GPU, TPU, which is a tensor processing unit, and that can handle computations with much greater complexity and volume. So these GPUs are becoming scarce because there are only very few companies in the world that produce good GPUs, and Nvidia is one of them. There is such a huge demand and back orders on GPUs that these are in very short supply right now. And if you really look at some of the causes, you will notice that there are some rare earth minerals that go into the making of these processors. And at a national level and at a national security level, this has become a topic on how do you de-risk your supply chains as an enterprise and even as a nation to ensure that you have access to the right rare earth materials. And India is taking steps to also de-risk in this area, since there is a lot of dependency on China at the moment when it comes to rare earth metals. So there is also a conversation from a McKinsey perspective. What's the impact on consulting jobs? Now, view is that, look, I mean, all this, but ultimately problem solving, creativity, and change management, which are the hallmarks of good management consultants, right? They can't be replaced by technology. And we must trust McKinsey as a consulting organization to put out this point of view. So if you really look at what Milan Kuber has to say, and I'm sure everyone's aware of this book, right? Management Consulting, A Guide to the Profession. I'm sure a lot of us in this call are seeing, and we would have definitely gone through this book at least once to study for that exam. So, so Milan Kuber says that here are the areas of management consulting, right? So if you really go through the book, you will notice that this is how it is categorized. So there is general management, there is strategic management, financial management, marketing, and so on and so on, right? These are the traditional areas. And then there is information technology, which is where the whole data and analytics comes into the picture. But does this represent the current state of how management consulting is? So this is what AI is doing today. So value creation in activities required to automate tasks, consolidate and synthesize information across multiple functional domains. So you can see, um, from a marketing and sales perspective, from an operations perspective, from an IT engineering perspective, risk perspective, from a HR perspective, what are all the things that AI is getting into? So I'm not going to read this. I'll just pause for our participants to have a look and understand what is happening here. See, India is known for IT talent, programming talent. Imagine software writing code and documentation. So what do people do? Fresh out of college, who have spent 4 years in engineering, or who've spent, let's say, a lot of time in coaching institutes, in institutes such as Aptech, NIIT, and so on and so on, trying to learn how to write Java programs or Python programs, right? So is there a need for them to rethink their approach to careers? So I'll just pause for a few more seconds for folks to go through this piece. This is an important context for us. It's an excerpt from McKinsey. Okay, so given this, now the key topic for us, what are the opportunity areas for management consultants, right? It seems to be quite challenging, but there is always a silver lining in the cloud, and Chandan pointed out, right? So there are more value additions that can happen, and here are some of them, right? So helping companies develop technology strategy and AI stack aligned to business strategy. So for example, do you choose Microsoft, or do you choose Google, or do you choose Facebook, or what stack do you choose? Do you choose a CRM with a co-pilot, or is that is that a done deal, or does there need to be some more thought on how the customer service operators need to be enabled with AI? Uh, how do staff get trained in new skills such as prompt engineering, right? Most people might not even know what this is. So understanding what is prompt engineering and teaching these people how to get better at it is a good area. Becoming experts in data protection and regulatory compliance, which is rapidly evolving, is another good space. How do you enable, or how do you coach software companies to transform their business models given the impact of AI? That's a big topic, right? So people who are saying, hey, you know what, we do software development, we do testing. What happens to their business now, and how can their business model evolve? Information infrastructure, information security. What are the emerging paradigms given the nature of compute and the nature of digital assets that are being deployed? How do we enhance knowledge management and the technologies for knowledge management so that they're useful at a particular point in time for a particular person? And from a public sector perspective, think about information security and infrastructure strategies for national security, given the potential of large language models, deep fake, and these kind of things that are happening. Okay, so these are some of the opportunity areas. And from a consulting process perspective as well, there are a lot of things to think about. Again, I'm referring Milan Kuber's book, since it is common from an IMCI perspective. So this is how Milan Kuber describes the consulting process.
Just a quick note on the time. So I think we are almost there. Maybe you can take a few more minutes to sort of.
Yeah, I'll conclude with this. So I'll take 5 minutes more and stop.
Sure.
Okay, so this is how Milan Kuber describes the process. So there is an entry phase, there is a diagnosis phase, there is an action planning phase, there is an implementation phase, and the termination phase of a consulting engagement. Now, when Milan Kuber wrote the book, he was envisioning perhaps all these phases carried out by a person, and therefore the skills required to conduct this exercise are well documented in his work. But think about the impact of AI on consulting process. So there are some steps which are probably exclusive to a human expert. There are some steps where AI can lead, and there are some steps where a human leads with AI input. Now, this is something that we can think about as how management consultants can be enabled with AI and with data science. Okay. So with this,
is a brilliant piece. I think there's a brilliant piece what you have put forth. This really sort of gives a more contemporary sense to the consulting delivery and how they can, how the whole AI can aid in terms of delivering it with greater quality.
Yeah, thanks, Chandan. So I think even the way we do consulting and even the way we evaluate consultants might evolve, right, as a result of this. So, uh, so with this, I conclude, and I leave the following questions for group discussion, right? So, given what we've seen and heard and our experiences, where would clients prefer to adopt an AI first approach in traditional management consulting assignments? And how can management consultants evolve and differentiate value given developments in AI? So I think these are the questions for us to ponder over. And now we'll open the floor, and Chandan, and back to you.
Sure. Thank you, Sai. Of course, I already have quite a few questions, but please, I'll want others, if you have any questions, just unmute and ask your question, please.
May I just ask a question on this, the second last slide that you showed, Sai? I thought, as Chandan said, I agree. That is a very nice way of representing what AI can do, what people can do, and where the concurrent list, if I can call it that, where both sides can actually play a part. That is, I think, a very nice piece. Practice, and since you've been a practitioner both in the consulting side as well as internal consulting side, of course, as well as
Yes.
of course in the from a data analytical perspective. And I presume the large firms that you work with have also been using very large, let's say the big four consulting companies from around the globe. Do you find any of them actually starting to use this approach? I mean, you mentioned the McKinsey article, which is there. I understand that, but in your work, have you met these guys? Have you found them actually using it? Because ChatGPT is what we all.
Yeah, I mean,
but AI is not ChatGPT alone. It's been there in the ballpark for a while.
That's true. So I think the usage, in my experience, started with data analysis, right? So now the point is, can you if you look at what Power BI Copilot does, right? So if you give it sales data and say, create a chart on sales trend for me and tell me how well sales is doing, it gives the answer back within a few seconds, right? So this data analysis is the first piece that has taken up, right? I think the where I am seeing a lot more usage now is in getting the facts or collecting external facts to prepare for a consulting assignment. So, for example, if you are going to talk to a client in the pharma industry, the question then becomes, tell me about how the pharma industry is evolving in Asia Pacific, right? And tell me about vaccines, for example. And the consultant gets a full brief, even with respect to the company and the competition and so on. And the amount of homework that the consultant can get done in about a day's time is much, much more than what it is in the past. And also on the solution search, there is a lot of productivity that has been gained through AI.
Thank you.
Nice. So, waiting for more questions to come in.
A quick one. Hi, it's Nagaraj Bhatt from Hyderabad chapter.
Yes,
Hi, Nagaraj.
Hi. So I've seen your progression that you've presented from the bottom. What was that at the bottom? The one which is customized till the ChatGPT, the 4 different stages that you've captured in the first or second slide. That is to do with how the AI had evolved and how McKinsey with its Lily and EY with its EY.ai. I am from EY basically. So these two are predominantly currently focusing on the existing knowledge management within the organization, what McKinsey has and what EY has through their consulting experience, not exposed to outside environment. But my question to you would be, for an individual, for a traditional management consultant, when we come up with a business case or a business problem, we need to convert that. Before building a model, we would convert that to a business, from a business problem to a model building exercise, wherein you start reading and all that. What are the stages or what are the steps between a problem statement or a business problem to choosing a model? What are the steps involved in between? How could one make the right choice, which model to select? Because that's where it gets tricky. Now, as you mentioned that we have got automated model building solutions, but defining a problem statement to choosing the model, how should one go about it as a management consultant? That's my question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I will take a few minutes to answer that. I hope that's okay, because the question is a depthy one, and I think it will be good to answer this with some context. So I'm sharing again the slide that you referenced. I hope it is visible. So yes. I think you are referring H2O.ai and AutoML. So see, H2O.ai, I'm referring to this. So these are publicly available tools. And H2O.ai itself is open source. So I'm not referring a particular company implementation of H2O.ai. And similarly, AutoML. right? So AutoML, you can look at automl.org to understand what AutoML is and how it works. Okay, so these are couple of references to the point that you were asking about. Now going to your question, which is what are the steps in identifying what is the right model to to be utilized. So firstly, I think the question starts with what kind of output does the business need to make a decision, right? So that is that a choice amongst various options, or is it a number that helps us understand where we are headed in terms of our expectations versus how the reality is panning out, right? So is that some kind of a text, or is that some kind of a message that needs to be given? So we have to start with the output, or start with the end in mind, like Stephen Covey used to say, right? And then use that to look at what class of models are available to generate that kind of output, and what kind of data sets or what kind of assumptions are being used to build that model. And then the question is, the most important question from a company's perspective is, do we have the data? Is the data accessible? Is the data clean? Do we have the right features to develop this model? Many times there is a struggle here in getting the right, relevant, and current data to be able to develop these models. And the process of model selection is often iterative when done manually. So you select a model and then you build, you train, test it, and then it comes up with a certain result. And then you try other models in parallel. And this is where AutoML accelerated that process. And H2O.ai made the process more aesthetic along with the acceleration, where you can see the results of multiple approaches right in front of you. And then you can choose like 3 models out of 10 and say, I'm going to dig deep here, right? So this whole art and science of manually developing models and then saying that I'll select something out of a list has been enabled with these tools, and a lot of the manual work has been automated. So right now, I think the question is, how do we frame the problem and how do we do feature engineering, right? So the feature engineering is a function of two things. One is the business problem, and what kind of data sets are we creating to ensure that we are able to answer the questions today, and these data sets continue to be an asset for the company in future, right? So those are to me more important questions that we need to address. And model selection in today's world is the consequence of what are the the performances of the different models, and do the models show compatibility with the distribution, as an example, right? And are they from a testing point of view giving more generalized results compared to models that possibly overfit, right? So these are some of the parameters that one uses to be able to select models properly. I hope I am answering your question directionally.
You did. Thanks a lot, Sai.
Okay, thanks, Nagraj.
Uh, Sai, hi, this is Mushtaq from Hyderabad chapter.
Hi, Mushtaq.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to ask you, for the benefit of all, especially the senior management consultants who have been in practice for 30 years, 40 years. Now, these technologies are getting, advanced day by day. So
Yeah.
how do they learn? I mean, you don't have to learn A to Z. I mean, many of them have been earlier. They just get upgradation. So how do they, what particular skill, or how do they learn, what technology to learn to, to be very excellent data science and data analytics? Because today, if you see, even ISB is offering the course, even normal institute is offering a course, even a corporate institute is offering the same course. So how do you pick and choose what is necessary for management consultants?
Very good question, Mushtaq. So, in fact, I will take that question a step further, and I will ask, have folks on this call seen CBSE's guideline for data science for class 7?
Nope.
No. So it is publicly available. So I think, if you see the class 7, class 8, I'm going to share my screen again and show you this. Um, so this is fascinating. Okay, so I'm sharing with you class 8 content. I hope you can see this.
No, your screen is frozen in the PPT. I think.
Acha.
Yes,
So how about now?
Now
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah. So this is class 8 content of CBSE, right? So it's grade 8. Okay. And this is a teacher handbook. There is also a student handbook available. I'm just going to quickly show you the content. Okay. So look at this. What is data? Brief introduction to data science. Careers in data science for a class 8 student. Can you imagine that? Data visualization, asking the right question, applications of data science, overview of AI, analytics on text and image data. So forget about management consultant practitioners. Question is, how are we going to compete with 8th standard student? That is the question that is making me think more nowadays. And if you go through this book, right, it's quite nice. And this obviously talks about how to teach the student what is data, and the student also has some good works here, right? So see, many times what happens is very senior professionals, right, it's not so easy if somebody suddenly we say learn R and Python, right, and that is the way for us to learn data science, right? It is very tough. So it is important for us to start with the domain of experience. So for example, if we are doing consulting in healthcare, or if you are doing consulting with HR as an example, right, a people related area. So important for us to start with the understanding of AI and data science applications in the domain, and then look at what value these applications are offering, and then try a top down learning approach where management consultants experience is coming to the fore, supplemented with data science skill versus trying to pick up the internals of data science, and then trying to learn how to build models. See, it is now, if I were to give you an analogy, we all drive automobiles, right? But we may not know how these automobiles are manufactured, much less how do we make them by hand, right? So what's the point? So that's what we have to ask ourselves, and utilize the best of our experience and try to supplement that with analytics models, or with generative models that are currently available. So I hope that answers your question.
Sorry, I would just like to add, maybe Sai, if you can suggest, because one of the facet of Mustaq's question was, how do we identify if we have to skill upgrade? I mean, what is the right channel to go to? Because today everyone sort of offers that they do it, but I mean, in terms of a management consultant who is sort of trying to get attuned to it, like you mentioned, that as long as you're able to cover the basics, should be good enough. What's the right channel or direction you suggest one should look at?
So look, I mean, there are many channels and there are many good channels. Okay. So, so for example, we used to have, I mean, YouTube, YouTube, Udemy, right, edX or Coursera, all these offer great options to learn, and everyone knows about it, right? So we used to have, R boot camp, Python boot camp, all these things that are available for you to learn through interactive interfaces. I see there are very few channels which will actually tell a management consulting exactly what to learn, because usually management consultant has a very niche experience that they've built up, and there's a boutique consulting that has been happening over many years, and that has built up. So try asking this question to GPT and say, can you build me a program that does this functionality by accepting these two fields as input and give me the output, and build a screen. So GPT will do that for us. So then the question becomes, do I need to carry that information in my memory, or do I think of GPT or an LLM as, let's say, my junior consulting partner in my firm who will get this job done for me? Right. So it then then subconsciously we are outsourcing that to a non-human worker in our boutique consulting firm.
That's a good
So if I
one.
put it that way.
So this is good. I think it was quite insightful. Of course, on time, I just realized that we have almost sort of crossed a little bit on time. But so again, for the group, if there are more questions, I think if you can route it through through Praveen, or you can send an email to me also, we can of course coordinate and get answers to that. For me, till let's say Chat GPT can sort of give a vote of thanks. Let me just try to do that for now. So I think, Sai, there are a few things that I think clearly comes out today in the discussion, specifically from a management consulting point of view. I think one of this is the way consulting is done today. I mean, specifically management consulting, which I'm sure the India today has completely got it incorrect in its understanding. But in the real sense, and I know some of the people already who are there now are very, very seasoned, and they have delivered a lot of consulting work. So the nuance and the complexities involved are pretty much well appreciated within this group. So I think one of the clear trend that one sees is the way the whole delivery today is done. I mean, right, start to end. And what are some of the facets in which today AI aids you to probably dig deeper and get a better yield out of the whole process? Like you mentioned, the entire research work or the pre-research work that you would go before a meeting can be done in few minutes, if not in hours. So that you are able to be hands-on, even if you are consulting something where you are not completely familiar with the industry or that particular sector. So at least it gives you that sort of a possibility today. But at the same time, considering the cognitive behavior plus the complexity, which an AI can't get a program of unless it'll be done, is of course that complexity can still be answered by humans. So which it clearly shows that today I think one very clear message is for us to get a more familiar view of how we use it. Like the example or the analogy that you gave, we don't essentially need to know how a car is manufactured, but as long as you know how to drive it and make the most of it. So I think that was quite insightful. I think on the second part of this as well, in terms of some of the questions which also came up, uh, I think AI still is in a bit of evolution today. Like the Chat GPT, of course, it shows possibility. Of course, over the years, it will become more and more stronger and powerful, and maybe possibly slightly more accurate to some of the things where it may not be up to mark today, which of course and during down the lane it will come to. And at the same time, there are data policies, there are policies around data privacy, which is also done in India under the Government of India initiative. So I think a lot more of these things are coming. Of course, our kids will be much more abreast with all of this. Looking at the courses CBSE is looking at for class 7 and 8, it was, I mean, it's very encouraging on one hand to see what they'll be exposed to. Of course, at the same time, if they are able to get some context with the experience, and one hopes the teachers will be able to provide that part. So I think all in all, we really enjoyed, and this was a very, very insightful session. Sai, thank you very much for this.
Oh, thank you so much for the patient listening and the insightful Q&A, right? The questions give the answers, and thank you for the great questions and the interest.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. If you can, I mean, if all of you, if you can just put on your video for 1 minute, I can take a quick click out of it, and maybe we can share it internally. 20 seconds. I'm just waiting. 20 more seconds. If you can just put your video on. I know it's a Friday evening, and this is a time where you may not be comfortable to share your video. So of course, I'm just clicking now as we speak. Right, there we go. Thank you very, very much. And all of you have a good evening ahead. We hope to see you in the next segment of our knowledge session very, very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chandan. Thanks, Sai.
Bye.